Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Transit officials in New York City say they're investigating a bizarre and dangerous subway incident this week after an unidentified woman managed to break into a locked MTA train and take it for a brief joyride in the early hours of the morning. The strange scene unfolded just after 4 a.m. on Thursday, July 17th, when the woman, described by police as having long red dreadlocks, somehow gained access to a parked N train at the Broadway station in Astoria. From there, she allegedly moved the out-of-service train southbound one stop before coming to a halt at 36th Avenue. Officials with the MTA say that no one else was on board the train at the time and that there were no injuries or damage reported. Luckily, regular service was not affected. While details about how exactly the train was operated are still under review, sources say the woman may have used a universal subway key, the kind typically used by conductors, to access the cab and get the train moving. According to union officials, these keys are routinely locked away but are also known to turn up on the black market. Investigators believe this might not be the woman's first subway stunt. Sources told local media that she matches the description of a suspect involved in a similar incident several months ago, one of several joyrides reported in recent years. In fact, Thursday's incident marks at least the fourth time since January 2024 that an unauthorized person has taken control of a subway train. Previous cases include a pair of 17-year-olds who commandeered a train in Briarwood last fall, and a group involved in a January 2025 incident in Brooklyn's Park Slope area. The MTA says it's planning to introduce new security measures in response to the growing problem, including driver cab alarms, derail locks, and possible biometric security features. However, a timeline for those changes has yet to be announced. At the time of this recording, the woman behind Thursday's joyride remains at large, and the investigation is ongoing.
A Michigan fast food worker is facing first-degree murder charges this week after prosecutors say she fatally stabbed her manager at McDonald's not long after being sent home early from her shift. The suspect has been identified as 26-year-old Afeni Badu Muhammad. Authorities say the incident unfolded on the morning of July 10th at a McDonald's location in Eastpointe. According to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, it all started when Muhammad got into an argument with her manager, 39-year-old Jennifer Harris. Jennifer allegedly told Muhammad to leave work early, and that's exactly what she did. But a short time later, Muhammad reportedly returned through the employee entrance at the back of the restaurant wearing a mask. That's when she allegedly pulled out a knife and stabbed Jennifer multiple times. A customer in the drive-thru line, who witnessed the stabbing, attempted to stop the attack by pulling out a legally owned firearm and firing through the window. It's unclear if Muhammad was hit, but she managed to flee to her car. That same customer followed her and held her at gunpoint until police arrived. Jennifer was rushed to the hospital, but tragically died from her injuries. She was a mother of 6 and had worked at that McDonald's location for 15 years. Muhammad was arrested and charged the same day with first-degree premeditated murder and carrying a dangerous weapon with unlawful intent. A judge set her bond at $25 million. Her attorney told reporters, quote, "There are a lot of things that need to come to light regarding this matter. So far, Muhammad has entered a not guilty plea." In the aftermath of the killing, the local community rallied in support of Jennifer and her family. Hundreds gathered outside the restaurant for a balloon release, while others joined a no-violence rally at her church just days later. Her pastor, Tanisha Evans, described Jennifer as more than just a congregant, saying, quote, "She had a contagious smile, and she was just a beautiful person inside and out. All she did was go to church, to work, and take care of those children. She was a devoted mom." Both of Jennifer's daughters also spoke publicly about the loss. Her eldest, Antonia Griffin, called her, quote, "the best mom anybody could ever ask for," and said that her mother woke up every day to work for us. Her younger daughter, Antonisha, simply said, quote, "It hurts so bad that my mama is not here." A GoFundMe campaign has since been launched by Jennifer's church in partnership with her family, aiming to help support her kids as they grow up without their mother. The campaign page states in part, quote, "Through this fund, Jennifer's legacy of strength, compassion, and dedication will continue to guide and uplift her children." The McDonald's where the attack took place remains closed, with the owner calling the killing a heartbreaking tragedy. Prosecutor Peter Lucido echoed that statement, calling the killing senseless and heartbreaking. He went on to say, quote, "This is a family shattered, a future forever altered. It is deeply troubling that we continue to see violence used as a response to conflict. This tragedy should serve as a call to action for all of us." At the time of this recording, Afeni Badu Muhammad remains in custody.
Authorities in Northern California are investigating a deeply disturbing case this week after a man allegedly murdered his young son in a public park, then called 911 himself in what police believe was a calculated attempt to provoke a deadly confrontation with officers. The suspect, identified as 48-year-old Matthias Zyburn of Fremont, was fatally shot by police on Saturday, July 12th in San Jose's Cataldi Park. According to San Jose Police Chief Paul Joseph, the incident began around 3:30 p.m. when a man called 911 reporting that a stranger had stabbed his 9-year-old son. He even gave physical description of the supposed suspect, a description that officers would later learn matched Zyburn himself. When police arrived at the park, they found Zyburn crouched over the boy's body, clutching a blood-covered kitchen knife. Officers ordered him repeatedly to drop the weapon, but he refused. Police say he made several statements indicating that he wanted to be shot, and then charged toward officers with the knife raised. That's when both an officer and sergeant opened fire, killing Zyburn at the scene. In a press conference held Monday, Chief Joseph told reporters that the 911 call was all a part of a disturbing setup, stating, quote, "These officers had no idea that the frantic person on the line was in fact the suspect himself, a deranged man who had murdered his own son." Joseph described the child's injuries as unimaginably severe, adding that in his over 3 decades on the force, he couldn't recall a more brutal case of parental violence. He added, quote, "His call for help was actually a twisted plan to force officers to shoot him. It was a final, desperate, and selfish act." The child was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators say Zyburn had no criminal history or documented mental health issues, but had moved frequently over the years. Detectives are now working to retrace his steps and determine what may have led to the killing. The shooting is currently under review by the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, including an examination of police body camera footage. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan called the killing horrific and heartbreaking, writing in a statement, quote, "I cannot imagine how scared this child must have been when the person meant to be their protector became their attacker." Back at the park, many residents were stunned to learn what had taken place just hours earlier. For now, police say their investigation remains ongoing, but what's already clear is that the tragedy was planned. In the words of Chief Joseph, quote, "The suspect chose the location and pre-planned a confrontation with officers in order to force them to take his life."
A 63-year-old woman is facing serious felony charges this week after police say she came up with a bizarre and deadly plan to murder her ex-husband by sending him a box of fentanyl-laced chocolates disguised as a honeymoon gift. The woman, identified as Pamela Jean Stanley, was arrested back on May 30th, but was only indicted this month on 3 felony charges. Investigators say the whole thing began after Stanley found out her ex-husband, a man named Jeff Koth, had recently gotten engaged to someone new. That's when she allegedly decided to mail him a fake congratulatory package from a travel agency, complete with poisoned chocolates disguised to look like a honeymoon incentive offer. Thankfully, the plan didn't stay secret for long. According to the Parker County Sheriff's Office, Stanley told an acquaintance exactly what she was planning to do, not realizing that person was secretly recording the conversation. The tip eventually made its way to authorities, who launched an investigation and set up an undercover sting. From there, things escalated quickly. Investigators posed as fentanyl dealers and arranged to meet Stanley in the parking lot of the Scottish Inn Motel in Weatherford. She reportedly drove several hours from her home in Coleman to make the deal. The moment she accepted what she believed was powdered fentanyl, she was taken into custody. A search of her car later turned up real drugs, though, nearly 12 grams of meth, which was seized and booked into evidence. Stanley has since been indicted on 3 separate felony charges: criminal solicitation with intent to commit murder, criminal attempt to commit murder, and possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver. Her bond was set at $450,000. As for her ex-husband, the intended target, he told reporters the whole situation, while disturbing, didn't come as a total shock. The two were married for 14 years before divorcing in 2019, and according to Jeff, he'd already been suspicious of his ex for a while. He said he'd previously heard rumors that she was trying to hire a hitman, and had even spoken with investigators about it in the past. He also said he'd taken steps to protect himself, including installing cameras around his property and building a decoy person using a hat and jacket to make it look like someone was standing in his kitchen window. As he put it, quote, "She's kind of that way. Her plan was pretty ingenious. She thought this stuff through." Jeff even admitted that if Stanley had successfully gone through with her plan, he probably would have eaten the chocolates, and said he's incredibly relieved that the scheme was caught in time. He told reporters, quote, "I'll never look at a box of chocolates the same." At the time of this recording, Pamela Jean Stanley remains in custody.
Authorities in Ohio say that a man is successfully in custody after he allegedly murdered his ex-wife's new boyfriend during a karaoke night at a local bar. The incident happened on Friday, July 11th at a venue called Louie's Corner House in the village of Buckeye Lake. Officers with the Licking County Sheriff's Office say that they arrived at the scene following a report of a shooting and found 42-year-old Benjamin Hawk dead from a gunshot wound. According to witnesses, the whole thing unfolded while Hawk was in the middle of singing Linkin Park's One More Light with his girlfriend, a woman who just so happened to be the ex-wife of the suspected shooter. The suspect has been identified as 59-year-old Richard Lindgren. Authorities allege that Lindgren entered the bar about an hour after Hawk and his girlfriend had arrived and opened fire without warning. Witnesses told reporters that there had been no argument or confrontation before the shooting, just a single unprovoked attack. After firing the shot, Lindgren reportedly pocketed his weapon and calmly walked out of the bar. A warrant was issued shortly afterward, and he was arrested the next day in South Carolina. At the time of this recording, police say they are working to extradite him back to Ohio. It's not yet clear if he has been formally charged or retained an attorney. More troubling details about Lindgren's behavior have also emerged. DJ Robert Humble, who was working that night and standing just 4 feet away from the shooting, said he had warned Lindgren previously about how he treated his ex-wife in public. The DJ told reporters that Lindgren would frequently shout insults at the woman when she performed, calling her names and attacking her character. Humble claimed he recently told Lindgren that if he didn't stop, he would no longer be welcome at the venue. As for Benjamin Hawk, those who knew him say the loss is devastating. Hawk was a well-known figure in the local karaoke community and was considered an up-and-coming talent. His brother, David, said he used music as a way to express his emotions and connect with others. In an online tribute, the IKF Karaoke Cup Ohio described him as, quote, larger-than-life presence with the voice of an angel, who never met a stranger, just people that didn't know they were friends yet. David has also set up a GoFundMe campaign to help cover funeral costs and support Hawk's 2 daughters. In the fundraiser, he described his brother as someone who's always looked out for others and would give everything he had to help someone in need. At the time of this recording, the investigation is ongoing.
Representatives from the LAPD say that dozens of people have been left wounded this week, some with extremely serious injuries, after a driver plowed into a crowd of clubgoers, a disturbing act that is believed to have been deliberate. The whole thing unfolded in the early hours of July 19th, outside of the Vermont Hollywood Club, located near the intersection of Vermont Avenue and Santa Monica Boulevard. According to reports, the club was hosting a hip-hop and reggae event that night, and the area was crowded with people. Many were still lined up outside waiting to get into the venue, while others were milling around or grabbing something to eat from nearby food vendors. However, around 2 a.m., things took a horrifying turn. It happened when, out of nowhere, a silver Nissan Versa sped off the road up onto the sidewalk. The vehicle proceeded to plow into the crowd of people, ripping right through the club's valet stand before finally coming to a stop after crashing into a food cart. It's now alleged that the driver of the vehicle, 29-year-old Fernando Ramirez, was intoxicated at the time of the crash. However, it's also believed that the incident was deliberate. According to witnesses, Ramirez made a U-turn before speeding towards the crowd. He had also been kicked out of the club a short time earlier for being disruptive. When police and other emergency responders were called to the scene, the full scope of the awful situation became apparent. At least 30 people were injured, many of whom needed to be hospitalized. And while so far no deaths have resulted from the incident, that could still change, as 7 people currently remain in critical condition. Ramirez himself was hospitalized with serious injuries, though these were not from the initial crash. Harrowing video footage taken from the scene shows the moments after the disturbing incident, in which the 29-year-old was pulled from his vehicle and attacked by an angry mob of witnesses. One of those witnesses allegedly pulled out a gun and shot Ramirez in the lower back before fleeing the scene. At the time of this recording, Ramirez remains in the hospital, though he's been charged with assault with a deadly weapon. More charges are expected to follow, and the exact motive behind the crime is still under investigation. As for the man that allegedly shot Ramirez, his identity is currently unknown. Police say that they are searching for him and have described him as a bald Hispanic man, approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing 180 pounds. The man was wearing a blue jersey at the time of the incident and was last seen heading westbound from Vermont Avenue. Anyone with information about the case is encouraged to reach out to the LAPD.
Representatives from the Maine State Police released disturbing new details in an ongoing investigation this week, revealing that they not only made an arrest in connection with a highly publicized murder, but that the suspect in the case is a local teenage boy. If you're a regular viewer of our Crimes of the Week series, then you'll likely remember that in our previous edition we brought to you the tragic story of 48-year-old Sunshine Sonny Stewart. Sonny was a former marine biologist and avid outdoor enthusiast who disappeared while on a camping trip in the town of Union. On July 2nd, she headed out for a solo paddleboarding journey on Crawford Pond near the site where she was staying at the Micmac family campground. Sadly, she never returned. After a search was launched, Sonny's body was found the following morning on 100 Acre Island, a wooded spot in the middle of Crawford Pond, only accessible by boat. If you'll recall, at the time of our last segment, Sonny's death had been ruled a homicide. However, little else was known about the case. No cause of death had been confirmed, and no suspects had been identified. As a result, some began to speculate that Sonny's murder could be linked to other unsolved cases. As we've spoke about previously, at least 13 bodies have been discovered throughout New England in 2025, primarily in wooded or remote areas. This has led many to theorize that an unknown serial killer is on the loose. However, it now seems that police are looking at another explanation. This week, they announced that they had arrested a local teenager in connection with Sonny's case. While many outlets have not named the suspect, some local news sources have identified him as 17-year-old Devin Young. According to reports, Young lives in the town of Frankfort, about 40 miles from Union, but it's believed he also recently stayed at the Micmac family campground. Additionally, police revealed that Sonny's death was the result of strangulation and blunt force trauma. Young has now been officially charged with her murder. At the time of this recording, many questions still remain about the case. It's unclear what evidence police actually have linking Young to the crime, and no motive has been confirmed. The investigation continues.
Authorities in Los Angeles say that they've arrested a suspect in a brutal double homicide case this week after a longtime television executive and her husband were found gunned down inside their multi-million-dollar home. The victims have been identified as 70-year-old Robin Kay, a former music supervisor and executive for shows like American Idol, and her husband, 70-year-old Thomas DeLuca. The couple had reportedly been dead for days by the time officers discovered their bodies on July 14th during a welfare check at their mansion in LA's Encino neighborhood. The grim discovery came after family members grew concerned when they hadn't heard from the pair. Inside the residence, officers found Robin and Thomas each dead from gunshot wounds to the head, one in the bathroom, the other in a pantry. Blood was found near the entryway, and there was also evidence of a broken window. Here's where things get even more disturbing. Police now believe the couple was killed back on July 10th, the same day officers initially responded to the home following a report of a possible burglary. However, because they didn't notice any signs of forced entry at the time, they never went inside. Incredibly, police sources have since told reporters that the suspect, 22-year-old Raymond Budarian, may have still been inside the home when those officers were initially checking it out. He was arrested just one day after the bodies were discovered and has now been charged with 2 counts of murder. Investigators allege that Budarian was in the middle of burglarizing the residence when Robin and Thomas came home and caught him in the act. It's believed that he was inside for roughly 30 minutes before the deadly confrontation occurred. As for the motive, detectives say that the attack appears to have been completely random. Budarian reportedly had no connection to the couple and no apparent ties to any larger criminal organization. Instead, he is described as a drug addict with a lengthy criminal history who acted alone. Other details in the case have since come to light, including the revelation that in the weeks before the murders, Robin Kay had reached out to a private security company because she felt unsafe. It's currently unclear exactly what caused her to feel this way, though what we do know is that she and her husband ultimately didn't follow through with hiring anyone. The home itself, last purchased for $4.5 million in 2023, was one of the largest in the neighborhood and was surrounded by high walls topped with spikes. Still, residents say the affluent Encino area has been a repeated target for break-ins and thefts in recent years. At the time of this recording, Raymond Bouderian remains in custody as the investigation continues. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.